On April 27th, 1956, Lowe's State Theater in New York City held the U.S. premiere of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So just how did a Japanese-made creature feature called Gojira come to America 2 years after it had been released in Japan? Remember, it was just over a decade since these unpleasant events, and anti-Japanese sentiments in America and much of the West were still very much alive. Godzilla's immigration to American shores began in 1955, when Toho's U.S. attorney, Paul Schreibman, got film distributor Edmund Goldman to see the original Japanese-language Gojira. Goldman quickly realized the movie had serious potential and bought the international rights for $25,000. He then arranged for a screening with Richard Kay of Jewel Enterprises Incorporated. Jewel Enterprises was an independent film producer of cheap exploitation films, but Kay knew a deal when he saw one and quickly agreed to pay approximately $30,000 for the film. This netted Goldman a roughly $5,000 profit, almost $60,000 in 2024 dollars. In a 1998 interview with Marla Matzer from the LA Times, Kay said it was nearly unheard of for American movie distributors to buy Japanese films in those days, but the picture had all the right elements, a lot of action footage and a scary monster. The trick in those days was to promise audiences something sensational. Mostly it revolved around sex, monsters, oddball, weird stuff. Examples include Roger Corman's Little Shop of Horrors and Sam Arkoff's I Was a Teenage Werewolf. In fact, unbeknownst to Kay, rival exploitation movie maker Arkoff was also bidding on Godzilla through a Toho representative. Arkoff himself recalled the whole situation as being ridiculous. They were dickering with Toho for about 3 months only to find out the rights were already sold. No one knows why Toho continued to haggle for the rights once they were already sold. Perhaps they did not realize that you could not sell them twice, or maybe they just got a kick out of having two American distributors dangling on a string. Did I mention that World War II had only ended a decade before? Now that Jewel Enterprises had Gojira, it had to do something with it. Jewel was a small production company owned by Richard Kay and Harold Ross. Ross handled distribution while Kay produced the movies. They mostly made cheap exploitation films like Wild Weed, Untamed Women, and The Golden Mistress. But with Gojira, they knew they had something grander, with real blockbuster potential, but it was going to need some Americanization, and this meant more money was needed. They were able to secure backing from Terry Turner, Joseph Levine, and Ed Barrison for the changes. Levine paid in $100,000, which pretty much covered the entire process. In fact, the total cost for the rights and the extra filming, not to mention the foam rubber Godzilla outfit that Toho shipped over from Japan, was a little less than $100,000. Veteran film editor Terry O. Morse was hired to work with writer Al Ward to rewrite the story to center around an American News Service foreign correspondent who would recount the story in flashback form. Actor Raymond Burr was hired as he was not yet an expensive A-list actor, ergo he was affordable, but he was somewhat well known since he had portrayed the killer in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window just a year earlier. His character of Steve Martin was only used for insert scenes, but Burr managed to turn in a memorably somber performance. Some say his scenes were shot in only 5 days. A Japanese-American real estate agent and character actor, Frank Iwanaga, played the part of Burr's interpreter and old acquaintance, security officer Tomo Iwanaga. Early in the roughly 3 months it took to shoot and edit the Americanized version, someone suggested to Kay that they rename the film from Gojira to Godzilla, King of the Monsters. To this day, there is still much debate about how the name was derived, but it's generally conceded that it was chosen because it was thought to be more visceral and memorable to Western audiences than Gojira. Dubbing only minimal footage seemed wise, since this was one of the early attempts at this technique, and, according to actor James Hong, all the recording of their dialogue took just 3, admittedly very long days, and was done without the voice actors ever actually seeing any of the footage. Much of the ancillary Japanese dialogue was not even redubbed, ergo it often does not match the subtitles, but in 1950s America, that just did not matter. The movie managed a moody, almost film noir feel, and although perhaps not as dark as the original Japanese version, it held a gritty tone throughout its runtime. This was accomplished despite the rushed schedule for the inserted scenes and the toning down of the original film's anti-nuclear theme. Although today the film is often criticized for having less depth than the original, in 1956 virtually no one in America had seen the original, so it was a non-issue. Toho was well aware of the steps that were being taken to make this adaptation, but they had no complaint as they were probably happy just to be breaking into the American market. Considering the producers' resumes, Morse had created a miracle based on the work of Honda and Tsuburaya, and Akira Ifukube's musical score was the cherry on top. It's still used today. It has become a classic Hollywood film score. Kay's company played Godzilla in the western U.S., including theaters around Los Angeles, while Levine had the East Coast rights. Godzilla, King of the Monsters is probably second only to King Kong as the quintessential monster on the loose spectacle, and was definitely the premier one of its time. It launched an entire monsterverse, but no one knows how much money they actually made in America, as no one published the box office receipts in those days. According to Kay, it was clearly a financial success, and he estimates the movie made more than $200,000 in the United States. This is back when a modest hit only grossed around $25,000 to $30,000. Kay later sold the rights to RKO, and in 1959, Godzilla's television debut on LA's Channel 9, then KHJ-TV, reportedly drew nearly 1 out of every 2 television viewers in LA. The success of the original Godzilla movie in America opened the door for more Japanese films, such as 1961's I Bombed Pearl Harbor. It truly does mark the point where America started taking Japanese cinema more seriously, an oft-forgotten part of the Godzilla legacy. Godzilla was in America to stay, and eventually even made it to San Francisco, but that's a different story. I'm Max of Max's Movies. Take care and enjoy the show.